Hello, beautiful people. Today is 22nd of May. My name is Sahil, and welcome to Newspaper Analysis. Friends, you might have heard about democratic socialism, the ideology that both private as well as public sector should go hand in hand. Such an ideology has been propagated and popularized by Tony Benn, the British parliamentarian. Guys, Tony Benn says all war represents a failure of diplomacy. And somewhat similar thing was also said by Adolf Hitler, who said, wherever the diplomacy ends, the war begins. So, guys, in the world countries, many a time wars are justified onto the name of democracy or onto the name of human rights. But those wars are nothing but a classic failure of state craftsmanship as well as of the diplomacy. So, guys, this particular quote can be used into the questions related to the international relation in GS paper number 2 as well as in the topics of essay. So, guys, let's begin with today's analysis. Friends, this is the page number 1 of the Hindu newspaper, and the first news item that we can see here is the impact of cyclone Amphan. Now, friends, we don't need to see the casualties and the number of losses here, but with respect to exam, these type of things could be important under two headings: geographical events GS number 1 and disaster management under GS number 3. Now, guys, before the cyclone Amphan made an impact, it was a geographical event, and with respect to cyclone, what could be the conditions of cyclone, how these tropical cyclones are named, what different types of cyclones are there, all these type of things we have already seen into the previous newspaper discussion, so it has been done. Now, guys, as it had made an impact, it has turned into a disaster. But before going into the disaster, a question comes that exactly what is the difference between a disaster and a hazard? So, guys, the answer is very much simple. So, guys, any event which is capable of destruction is called as hazard. And if actually the destruction is caused, then it is called as disaster. So, guys, the difference between disaster and hazard is that of vulnerability. I will give you one example. Suppose an earthquake came on some island and nobody died, no property destroyed, then it was simply a hazard. But at the same time, if such earthquake came in the Delhi and people died, property destroyed, then it turned into a disaster. And now, with the coming of Amphan, so many people have died, the property has destroyed. So, it is the category of the disaster, and the disaster needs to be managed and needs to be mitigated so that miseries of the people which have already been caused could be reduced. So, guys, in this particular background, we come to the disaster management. Now, friends, all these disasters, we have National Disaster Management Act, and under this National Disaster Management Act, there is a National Disaster Management Authority. There needs to be the State Disaster Management Authority at the state level. Then there needs to be the District Disaster Management Authority at the district level. So basically, these bodies at different levels will coordinate the disaster mitigation and management efforts. Then, for the funding part, there has to be the National Disaster Response Fund at the national level. Then there also needs to be the National Disaster Mitigation Fund, and similarly there needs to be the State Disaster Response Fund, State Disaster Mitigation Fund at the state level, and for the district level there are the District Disaster Response Fund and Mitigation Funds. So all these provisions for all these are primarily provided under the National Disaster Management Act. Now, guys, along with the national efforts at the international level, there is United Nations Office of Disaster Risk Reduction, which is headquartered in Geneva, and it also forms the international guidelines for the disaster management. Now, guys, UNDRR supports the Sendai framework, which was adopted in 2015 and is the global framework for the disaster reduction. And this Sendai framework is the successor of the Hyogo framework, which was in force from 2005 to 2015 for the disaster mitigation strategies. Now, further talking about disaster, there could be two type of disasters, that is natural and anthropogenic. These anthropogenic are those which are caused by the human activities. For example, gas leak at LG Polymers in Vishakhapatnam. Now, as we are talking about the cyclone, it is a type of a natural disaster. Now, one very crucial difference between natural and anthropogenic is that anthropogenic could be avoided, natural cannot be avoided. What we can do into natural disaster is the mitigation and reduction of the miseries. You cannot stop a cyclone, you can just reduce the miseries and can mitigate it. So therefore the mitigation is the most important part of a disaster, and this mitigation runs on two fronts: mitigation for the life and mitigation for the property. Now guys, for the life, actions are needed to be taken in the form of early warning, which was done for the Amphan. Then there need to be the evacuation of the people from the high risk zones, and after that there should be the timely assistance for the medical as well as urgent needs of the people. Now as we talk about mitigating the damage to property, then by doing this thing we can also directly mitigate the losses of the life also, because guys, you will see that majority of losses or the casualties have been occurred due to the falling of the houses, trees, electrocution, house collapse, etc. So by making the sustainable infrastructure, resilient infrastructure, all these sufferings could be mitigated. Now guys, in this particular direction, state specific action plans need to be made for the regions. For example, the regions lying near to the sea which are susceptible to the cyclones, their kacha dwellings or the irregulated colonies should not be allowed. Moreover guys, the electrocution also happens to be the major factor for the damage of the property, so the underground wiring system should be allowed here. Moreover, the shelter beds into the form of trees and mangroves should also be promoted into these particular regions, as they can absorb the impact of such events and can reduce their intensity substantially. And as now the event had occurred, governments both at the state as well as center level needs to provide the adequate funding, and for that particular thing government can also explore the initiatives such as disaster bonds, for which the long term funding can be availed, and that funding could be used for the reconstruction of the infrastructure. So guys, by this particular article I try to give you an entire overview of the disaster management in GS paper number 3. So guys, this was all about this. Now we'll move to the next. Now, guys, here's one more news item where the government has decided to resume the flights, but the price range for the flights have been capped. Now, as per the guidelines of Ministry of Civil Aviation, the fare for the flights have been divided into 7 sectors onto the basis of duration. And guys, the minimum fare as well as maximum fare have been listed. Now, along with the minimum and the maximum fare guideline, the airlines also need to sell 40% of the seats at the 50% mark between the minimum and the maximum airfare. For example, the flight for Mumbai is will be between 3500 to 10,000, so 40% of the tickets should be sold at the mark of 6750, which happens to be the midpoint between this particular range. Now, friends, why I had listed this topic under GS3 infrastructure, it is because here now we will explore a question that whether the airlines will be able to meet these kind of regulations or not. Now, friends, if we see the condition of aviation sector in India, then the condition is very much bad. And it is because of two reasons. Number one is force majeure, and number two is government induced. Now, guys, force majeure means those factors which are beyond anyone's control. For example, in 2019, Boeing 737 MAX airplanes were to be grounded because of the technical error. Then Pakistan closed the airspace, due to which aircrafts have to take a longer route. So guys, these are the problems which are beyond anyone's control, but it hampers the profitability of the aircraft. Second are the government induced. For example, very much high excise duties onto the aviation turbine fuel. And guys, in this capacity, the ATF prices in India are one amongst the highest, which reduces the profitability of the airplanes. After that, airport user charges are very much high. Now friends, aircrafts have to pay fees for the docking, parking, using the infrastructure, and these are very much high, due to which again the profitability reduces. And thirdly, due to the lack of infrastructure, profitability is also being reduced. I'll give you one example. Now guys, on to the typical day in Delhi, every aircraft needs to hover for 10 to 15 minutes over the airport because of the congestion. And because of this thing, the operational cost increases because ATF is very much expensive. So now government is not bringing any meaningful reforms, and at the same time the entire burden is being posed onto the aircrafts. And as aircrafts are the crucial part of infrastructure, their sustainability is very much crucial. But at the same time, it is also the reality that now they have become synonymous to essential commodity. But if airlines will be strangulated so much, then anyhow they will collapse. So friends, in this particular direction, to support these kind of measures, government also need to pass certain reforms such as rationalization of ATF prices, reduction into the airport user charges, building more greenfield and brownfield infrastructure, giving more liberalized space to the aircraft sector, etc. So guys, this was all about this particular news item. Holistically, please see it as a part of your GS3. And now we'll move to the next. Now friends, here the name of Pidawa has been mentioned, which is a small town in Rajasthan along with the border of Rajasthan as well as MP. Now, this particular thing has been in news because here the successful strategies in containing the COVID-19 has been utilized. Now guys, there are certain success models. For example, there was Bhilwada in Rajasthan, then there was the Padmanatita into the Kerala, and now we are seeing the Pidawa, also known as Pirawa. Now guys, it lies into the Malwa region of Rajasthan and happens to be a place which is famous for the plantation of opium. And because of these plantations, various economic benefits have also been reaped by this particular region, and happens to be the part of the black gold rush. Though usually black gold is referred to the hydrocarbons such as petroleum products, but for the opium also the word black gold is used. So it reaped the benefits of the black gold. And now, when we are talking about the COVID-19, into the first week of April, various cases emerged here, but the region has been successfully contained, and now the studies are being made with respect to the success reasons. Now their success is because of the four reasons. Number one is the extensive testing program, which was coupled with the contact tracing, and in that capacity the links of the family, neighborhood, street were traced out, and mohalla by mohalla surveillance was carried. After that, large number of sample collection centers were installed so that people could be tested into the large numbers. Then curfew was imposed and it was implemented effectively, which is much more important, so that the social distancing can be observed. And after that, the people also came out with a cooperative attitude and took the prevention as a strategy for their own welfare and good. So guys, by this particular strategy, Pidawa was able to contain the pandemic. Now, guys, all these things are also being followed into the other parts, but the problem is of implementation. Here, only good thing was the implementation and having a well defined goal and responsibilities for the different stakeholders. So, could be used as an example of effective and good governance into your GS paper number 2. And now we'll move to the next news item. Now, guys, here's an article on page number 2 which talks about the recently erupted boys' locker room controversy. And we will see this topic under GS paper number 2, juvenile delinquency, as well as GS paper number 1, society. Now, just a few days ago, a controversy broke out where a group was being operated on Instagram by the name Boys' Locker Room. Now, majorly underage boys below 18 years were the members of this group, and they were passing the sexist remarks on the women, and various such type of sexist language was being used. After that, investigation broke out and a lot of information came. into some other incident. A Snapchat snapshot was being circulated in which the kids were promoting the rape and all these kind of tendencies. Now guys, we don't need to go as where what happened, but this particular thing is bringing a very much important societal issue, that is lack of sex education and lack of gender sensitivity into the juveniles as well as youth. Now if we go into the roots as why such kind of portals and such kind of things are going very much rampant onto the social media, the reason is that teenage is a type of a tender age, and issues such as sex, bodily physiogamy, and these type of things arouse a kind of inquisitiveness into the children, and in order to search for the answer they end up on social media, and many a times these kind of inquisitiveness turns into a disdain and a kind of a sexism against the women, and the talks turn into the rapist and other type of tendencies. So into this particular conquest there is a need of sex education, so that at their homes, into their schools or other institutions, they are imparted with relevant education and are taught as what gender equality and equal treatment among the gender means. Otherwise there could be a problem that they might end up going with the dominant theme into the society, that is the objectification of the women and the show of masculinity as a sign of their dominance. Now if we see the social media as well as mainstream media, then from the songs to the picturization, everywhere objectification of women is going on, and that particular thing creates an impact onto the mind of children, and they also take that kind of path and tend to justify the injustices against the gender, and they also forget the meaning of consent into a mutual relationship between a boy and girl. Now one more angle come into these type of controversies, that the juvenile they are committing a kind of a societal crime, but they don't know that what exactly is wrong into these kind of things, because they don't have the maturity to delve into the intricacies of this particular thing. So into this background we are saying that the lack of sex education and lack of gender sensitivity might be playing a very big role here. Now, guys, moving from the controversy to the issue as what could be done. Then, number one thing is that the sensitization at home should be carried by the parents and the elders. And here, there is a need that not only the sex education but the sexual education should be given to the children, and the values such as gender equality, etc., should also be taught to them. Now, at this particular step, there is an awkwardness into the parents because there are barriers with respect to the language and understanding of these complicated issues. But these barriers are the points due to which the youth are ending up in social media to search for the answers. So, therefore, the language and communication should be very much clear, precise, and to the point. After that, society also has a certain responsibility into these kind of matters. Friends, once such controversy breaks out, everybody tends to resort to hypocrisy, where they themselves might be doing these kind of things but they don't shy in commenting on these type of issues. So the society as a whole should search as what are the ways as collectively more responsible response could be given to it. Then by the enforcement agencies, there is also a need to have a softer approach onto the cyber crimes which involves the juveniles, because of the mindset which might be playing a bigger role here. So investigation by the police personnel should not be intimidating and torturous to the kids, as they can disturb the lifelong psychology of the children. Moreover, there also is a need to have a better laws into this system. Guys, in India majority of laws are preventive in nature but they are not reformative. So the law machinery also needs to be reformed. After that, into many a type of in these type of cases, investigation is hampered because the servers on of these social media platforms are located in countries such as USA, and retrieving information from there becomes complicated due to the data privacy norms. So for in that particular respect also, intercurrent country agreement should also be signed. So guys, this was the particular issue, and I hope that you will see it into a bigger picture, because a question on these lines could be there into your mains exam. So guys, this was all about this. Now we'll move to the next. Now, friends, how the changes are coming into the day-to-day activity into the aftermath of crisis. So here, CISF has now adopted a no-touch policy for the passengers who will enter the airports. Now, their screening will be done via the thermal screening, and the tickets and their IDs will be checked via a camera. So there will be no physical frisking and touching in order to avoid the contamination. Moreover, at the entry points, the passengers now will cross a door frame which will be having integrated metal detectors, and now there will be no manual frisking from the metal detectors. So, guys, all this thing is being done in order to promote the healthy gap between the people. Now, guys, if we talk about CISF, then it stands for Central Industrial Security Force, and it is an armed police force which has been established by an act of parliament. So, therefore, CISF is a force created by a statute which is under the Ministry of Home Affairs. And CISF has been given the mandate to provide protection to the industrial units, government infrastructure, and such establishments. Even Delhi Metro receives the services of the CISF. Moreover, guys, airports, thermal power plants, all of them are guarded by the CISF, and it also plays a very important role into the disaster management. So, friend, that's all. Now we'll move to the next. Now, friends, here's a small article which mentions about the bilateral relations between the India and China. Friends, by the way, if you don't know, India-China relations are called as Sino-Indian relations and not Indo-China relation, because Indo-China is the name which we give to the three countries of Laos, Cambodia, and Vietnam. So always we use the word Sino-India. Now, into the recent times, we had discussed yesterday also that the standoff between the two armies, that is Indian Army and the People's Liberation Army of China, has occurred in different instances in Sikkim as well as in Ladakh. Now, this particular thing has brought the bilateral relation between the India and China at a very low point. Last time such low point came in 2017 when the Doklam issue happened. Now, friends, Doklam is a territory which is disputed between two countries, that is Bhutan and the China. Now we can see the location, guys. Here, this is Bhutan, this is Sikkim, and this one is China's Tibet region, and this entire is the Chumbi Valley, and here there is a Doklam Plateau. So, guys, here into this particular colorful map, also you can see that the Doklam Plateau is located somewhere here. Now, the Chinese want to capture this particular region because it has a strategic significance because of its height. Here, the China has a disadvantage because China here lies at a kind of lower level where Doklam is at some height. So they want to construct a road from here to gain a strategic advantage. Moreover, friends, if we talk about the Chumbi Valley, then this particular Chumbi Valley is very important region because it lies near to the Siliguri corridor, and this Siliguri corridor is a small strip of land, narrow strip of land which is connecting the mainland India with the northeast. And now, as a consequence, if there will be any domination into the Chumbi Valley, then China has a capacity that it can cut off the northeast from India, and Bhutan also fears the dominance into the Doklam. So therefore, when the China wanted to assert the control in Doklam, Bhutan as well as India gave a united front to the China, and the standoff continued for some days. Now, guys, it is being said that the present crisis into the Sikkim and Ladakh is such low point after the Doklam issue. However, in 2005 as well as in 2013, peace parameters have been signed between India and China, which calls for a peaceful resolution. However, right now the resolution has little been escalated. Now, friends, the problem of present crisis is because certain construction activities which were being taken by the Border Roads Organization, which works under Indian Army. Now the road has been constructed from the Dolat Beg Oldie and it goes through Shyok and Darbuk, which are located into the vicinity of the region. Now guys, Dolat Beg Oldie is an important and strategic location because it lies very much into the vicinity of Aksai Chin, which is into the control of China. Moreover, it is less than 10 kilometer from both line of actual control and the Chinese establishments. So therefore, China is objecting to this construction into the region. However, it is against the Chinese own strategy which they are following, and they had built considerable establishment into the region, and already China has an upper hand. But now if India is doing the same thing, then China has a problem. So guys, it is nothing but an example of unilateralism which is being adopted by China against India. But right now, the times are not favorable for India due to the present pandemic as well as economic fragility. So, therefore, the integrity of line of actual control, which goes from here, should be respected and the peace should be maintained. Moreover, guys, right now the boundary talks are going on between the special representatives, and because of this particular dispute, that thing has also been stopped. So flag meetings should be held by the army officers from both the sides and the dispute should be resolved as soon as possible. So guys, this was all about this particular issue, and now we'll go to the next news article. Now friends, this particular editorial talks about the implementation of the fundamental rights and critically apprises the Supreme Court in this particular regard. Now, friends, India happens to be a constitutional democracy, and the constitutional democracies are characterized by the fundamental rights. And in this direction, in our constitution, part 3 provides the fundamental rights to all the citizens. However, the more important than part 3 is the article number 32 and article number 226, because both of these articles provides the framework for the implementation of the fundamental rights. However, Article 32 is even more important among these two articles, because under this, Supreme Court has been placed as the guarantor of fundamental rights. Under this thing, Supreme Court enhance the scope of fundamental rights, can provide how these fundamental rights will be implemented, and can issue various directions also. So, in a way, Article number 32 acts as the soul or the heart of the fundamental right and even the constitution also. And therefore, we can also say that Article 32 implements the dictum of ubi jus ibi remedium, which means where there is right, there has to be remedy. So, remedy is being provided. Now, how remedy is provided? By issuing the writs. So, guys, writs are simply the directions issued by a court as what to be done and what not to be done. So, various writs are issued here. But now, a fundamental question has been raised by this particular article, that though powers have been there and even Supreme Court has expanded the scope of the fundamental rights under Part 3. For example, in Puttaswamy case, right to privacy was recognized. For example, in Anuradha Bhasin case, it was said that the internet is a fundamental right. But the problem is that remedy for the implementation of these rights is not being provided by the Supreme Court. And we can see this particular thing into the ruling which was given into the Foundation for Media Professionals case. Now, guys, what happened? Recently, certain public spirited individuals approached the Supreme Court that 4G connectivity should be restored in Jammu and Kashmir, as earlier, even in Anuradha Bhasin case, it was recognized that it is very much crucial. So, what happened? Supreme Court, in place of directing the state that such thing should be given, decided that a committee should be formed which will look what are the positives and negatives in this particular regard. And guys, Supreme Court said that any decision could only be taken after weighing the fundamental right as well as national security. Now a question comes that what is the problem in this entire thing? So guys, the problem is very much simple. The courts were expected that they will come in between when either the legislature or executive will be ineffective. But when the matter went to the court again bounced it back to the committee, which is nothing but a type of an executive only. So it is a kind of shunning of responsibility. Moreover, what will be the rationale of Anuradha Bhasin case when the right was given but it is not being fulfilled? Moreover, if we analyze the situation, then not only the right to internet is being impacted, but under article number 19, right to speech and expression is being neglected. Then right to free trade and profession is also being neglected, because now as the lockdown and social distancing is to be observed, internet trade of merchandise is very much crucial. Now a question comes that what could have been the best way to deal with it. So usually when such matters come, test of proportionality is taken. It involves three things. First of all, Supreme Court should see that when an action is being done, whether there are facts which justify that the action was rational, was good. For example, now the internet has been suspended, so Supreme Court needs to see the facts as what are the facts which justify the suspension of internet. Then there needs to be an alternative, whether there was some other alternative by which the same thing could have been done. If yes or no, if no, then fine, and if yes, then why that alternative was not taken. Then third is a competing interest. Now guys, into this action somebody will gain and somebody will lose. Now what are the weights of the losers and the gainers? Now, by the suspension of internet, will people gain more or lose more? That thing was to be seen. Now, after weighing these three questions, some result needs to derive. But this was not done. Simply the matter was referred to a committee, which is not the task that should be done by the Supreme Court, as it is the court of the first resort, which provides the primary justice. Now, friends, in this entire background, if we see, then we'll find that the state as well as courts, they have one asset which is most dear to them, that is a trust. And if such a trust will not be there, then there could be no grounds where the citizen will bind the authority of both the organizations. So trust should never be lost. However, if these type of things will be done, then into the mean course of time, citizens might be losing the trust onto the court, that they are the ones which provide justice at every cost. And if this thing happens, then the democracy will be in very much dangers. So guys, these type of trends should not be done and should be avoided at all cost. So guys, this was all about this particular article, and now we'll move to the next. Now friends, here's a news item on page number 9 where Finance Commission has noted down certain observations with respect to the recovery and recent reforms. Now friends, first of all, according to Finance Commission, the range of growth into the upcoming times could be between minus 6% to 1%. Now, first of all, the estimate which has been given is the nominal GDP. Now, guys, nominal GDP is different from the real GDP, because in nominal GDP, treatment of inflation is not done. So, guys, nominal GDP tends to always be little bit higher than the real GDP. So, guys, these estimates, even they look bad, but they still are the better estimates if we concern the data with respect to the real. So guys, into the times, the we are definitely going into the recession, according to the NK Singh, who's the chairman of 15th Finance Commission. Now, dip could be of two types. There could be a V-shaped dip, or there could be a U-shaped dip. Now guys, what is the difference here? V-shaped dip means that the V will go down and suddenly the recovery will be made. However, U-shape means that we will go down into the recession, and for some time the economy will contain into that recession, and after a time only the recovery will be coming. So more good will be the V shape, but there could be the possibility of U shape also. Now guys, as we had seen recently, that finance ministry came out with a lot of reforms, and in that capacity I had told you that the fiscal responsibility budget management act was of concern, because here the limit onto the borrowing of the state government was placed, but this particular limit has now been removed, and now it has been said that in place of 3%, now they can borrow up to 5% of their state GDP. which is also called as gross state domestic product, GSDP. Moreover, guys, at the same time, when the extended limit was given to the state with respect to borrowing, certain conditionalities have also been imposed. Now, guys, first condition is that 0.5% of additional borrowing will be unconditional. There are no conditions. However, beyond 0.5%, certain conditions are there. For example, you need to work for the ease of doing business, one nation, one ration card, power distribution, urban local bodies. Now, this actually are the conditionalities which will bring good for the state as well as for the nation. However, guys, please don't go into teeny tiny details as how much percentage is linked on how many conditions, not required. Now, guys, if we talk about the borrowing capacity of state, can state borrow money? Yes, they can borrow, and it has been written in article number 293. But the same article 293 also says that the state needs to take the consent of the central government. So that's why the government such as Kerala, Karnataka were asking the center government that please allow us to borrow, and now center has allowed them that from 3% they can go up to 5%. Now, guys, talking about the Finance Commission, it is a constitutional body which is set up under Article number 280, and this body is appointed by the President of India. Now, the role of the Finance Commission is to recommend the formula on whose basis the money between the center and the state will be divided. Now, guys, there are two type of devolutions which are recommended by the Finance Commission. One is vertical devolution and other is the horizontal devolution. Now, guys, vertical devolution means that how much money will come from the center to the state. For example, if there are 100 rupees, then out of 100, how many will come to the state? This is the vertical. Horizontal means that out of the total money which is coming for the state, how much will be given to the different states. Suppose there were 100 rupees at the center, and it was said that okay, 40 rupees should be given to the state, then this 40 is the vertical. But out of this 40, how much will be given to Bihar, how much to Maharashtra, how much to Odisha? That is the horizontal. So both vertical as well as horizontal are recommended by the Finance Commission. Moreover, it can also recommend some other areas also, for which the president makes a request to the Finance Commission. Now, guys, here's a small news item where the President Trump has suggested holding the G7 summit into the physical format as it happened earlier. Now, guys, into the aftermath of present crisis, it was being said that the G7 summit should either be cancelled or should be held via video conferencing. But now it has been said that in order to give a message of normalization, G7 summit should be held into the physical form into the Camp David in USA. Now, guys, Camp David is a very famous destination as it happens to be the retreat home for the presidents of America. So, guys, if we talk a little bit about G7, then it involves the seven most advanced economies of the world, and its members are Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, UK, and US. Earlier, G7 used to be G8, but as Russia has been removed, therefore the grouping is called as G7. So, friends, this was all about today's newspaper discussion. I hope you are liking our discussion. Thank you so much.